Hi, thank you for tuning into my channel, The Adventures of D Woods, and this video is going to be a comparison video of my ancestry DNA results and my parents. I just figured that if it was in my dad or in my mom, it would be in me in some way, form, or fashion. I know that everybody takes a little bit from their father, a little bit from their mother, and so I was just kind of curious of who I took after a little bit more. A lot of people can look at my mom and say, "Oh, you look like your mom," but then they might look see my dad, and then they'll say, "Oh, you look like your dad," and then they'll see my dad's sister, and then they're like, "Nope, you look just like your aunt." So I was just curious to know if I literally took a little bit from each of them. So I've already shown you the results prior to myself clicking on, but we're gonna just go through it real quick. So 88%, it's an approximate 88% that my dad has DNA from Africa. It's 89% for myself and 91% for my mom. So again, judging off the comparisons, that kind of makes sense because my mom is so high. Myself and my dad are roughly around the same. So with that, my top um, region is the Ivory Coast, Ghana, which is 29%, which is also the highest for my mom, which is 31%, and only 20% for my dad, the second highest. My next one is the Cameroon, Congo. This one I kind of missed on my dad's side. So I'm 18%. His came up to 6%, but it's also 19% on my mom's side. The men in Togo, I have 15%. My dad has 15%, and my mom is 14. So, we're all kind of roughly around the same. So then you have the Senegal, I'm 9%. My dad is 14, and then my mom is 7. So it's kind of like I'm leaning a little bit towards my mom on this side where she's kind of low, and my dad is a little higher. Um, I have 8% Nigeria, and my dad, that's his highest one of 21%. My mom doesn't have any trace of Nigeria in her. So I find that very interesting that his is the highest, and then mine is kind of really low, but then I fare off more with my mom as far as my highest results go. So then you have the African Southeastern Bantu, which I'm 8%, my dad's 8%, and my mom is 12. So I kind of fell on over there on my dad's side. Um, each one that my mom has, I have some part of, and each one that my dad has, I have some part of. So even though, like, I think my dad had the Nigerian, I had a little bit, my mom didn't, but anyone that my mom had, it fell under me as well. So next we'll go to the America. So they were saying that if you have less than 1%, you have just a trace amount of that DNA, but it could just so happen to be that you just have it, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's they claim to be very prominent. So I found it interesting that my dad has less than 1% of Native American, and I have less than 1% Native American. So at first, when I just saw my results by itself and I read what, about the trace regions and whatever being negative 1%. So I was like, okay, well, maybe, it's not a big deal. But then to see that my dad even has negative 1%, my mom doesn't have any trace of it at all. So to me, I find that to be very significant, and it probably go way back, way, 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 and way back. But just because there was a trace of it there, I still feel that it's significant. So, uh, negative 1%. I'm not negative one, but less than 1% of Native American blood means it's a drop. Back in the day, if you had a drop of black blood in you, that made you black. So, back in the day's terms, technically, I would be considered Native American. So, on to the next region, which is Europe. Now, this is where it gets a little weird to me, kind of, sort of. So, my dad has 11%, I have 9%, and my mom has 8%. Not a big deal. But then you start looking at the results. Great Britain, I have 3%, which is 7% under my mom. And then I have Iberian Peninsula, 2%. Neither one of my parents' results came out with the Iberian Peninsula. Then I have the Italy, Greece, which is 2%, which is 1% for my dad and 1% for my mom. So maybe the 1% together made 2. And then I have Finland, Northwest Russia, which is 1%, and that is 3% with my dad and nothing with my mother. And then I have, again, um, less than 1% of Ireland, and my dad has less than 1% as well. Now, my dad also has the European Jewish, which is 4%, and the Europe West, which is 2%. I don't have either one of those trace regions in my results. So I'm thinking that maybe if I do my research, the European Jewish and the Europe West kind of somehow could have transformed into like an Iberian Peninsula thing going on. Cause like I said, that he did 4%. It was 4% and 2%, and I only have 2% of the Iberian Peninsula. So I just find it interesting that we were doing so well. If I had it, one of my parents had it, and then get to Europe and it's like I have it, but neither one of my parents are um, in a in comparison with mine in that particular aspect. All the other ones are the same. And then lastly, West Asia, I have 1% Caucasus. Caucasus. My mom has a little bit of trace region DNA from West Asia, and it has Middle East. Now it's less than 1. It's less than 1%. So again, I find that interesting that hers is less than 1% and it's Middle East, and then I have 1% and that's Caucasus. So again, it's still in there. West Asia, her said West Asia. My dad didn't have anything under West Asia. So if it just wasn't anything, like it was just 0, I did not add that to the results page, this result page. But those are the results. I'm still working on trying to create a family tree and go back and go back and go back. And so it's kind of difficult because you see some census documents and records and the names are spelled differently, or you can I might ask an aunt or my dad and say, hey, do you know this person? And they're like, no, I don't recall that name being an aunt or uncle of mine. So to see everybody else's name, it's like, well, what happened to this one person? And is this even my family, or is this somebody else that just so happened to have fairly similar names? So again, I'm still working on that. It's gonna take a while, but I like researching stuff. I like digging in deeper and deeper. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that this spark an interest in you to find a little bit of your ancestry through your DNA, as well as comparing it to your parents. Um, I think this was just fun. It was a great opportunity, and I'm looking forward to digging in even deeper and possibly even finding some ancestors that actually came here from Africa. So I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to checking out to see what else I can find. And until next time, enjoy.